Welcome to the Pastor's Connection podcast, where we delve into the heart of ministry and explore the challenges and triumphs of pastoral life. Join us as we connect with inspiring leaders, share insightful stories, and equip one another with tools for effective ministry. Together, we can foster a community of support, encouragement, and growth in our calling. I am your host, Thomas Osterkamp, and I lead Beachside Community Church in Palm Coast, Florida. Looking forward to our conversation today. But this episode is brought to you by Family Meeting. The Family Meeting exists to help you have the meaningful relationships that you desire in your marriage and family. Along with the podcast, Thomas and Lysandra offer books, devotionals, as well as speaking at marriage retreats and conferences, providing real practical help for ministry families. Contact them at info@familymeeting.org to help the marriages and families in your church grow stronger today. On today's episode, we have my friend Dennis Fountain. He is the lead pastor, founding pastor at Moses Lake Baptist Church in Moses Lake, Washington. Dennis, good to see you today.
Hey, good to see you, Thomas. I want to hear more about this family first and family meeting stuff. I mean, that Thomas and Lysandra, they sound like an epic duo.
They're not bad. They're not bad. I'll say that.
I don't
so,
know.
well, at least
I've heard
she's
them
not.
Speak before, and I would say they knocked it out of the park. So,
Lysandra carries us. So.
Oh wait, that's you? Oh man.
Oh, that is me. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I did not even.
It's always weird reading your own ad read.
It was great. I enjoyed it. Thank you for bringing the smile to me.
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about leading your staff well. And this is a conversation that has come up in the Pastors Connection Network Facebook group. And so I'm excited to have Dennis on here to have this conversation today. Before we do that, Dennis, I like to let people kind of get an idea of and a feel for who you are as a person, but also as a ministry leader. Can you start off by telling us a little bit about your family?
Yeah, so my wife is Hannah. We have been married for just celebrated 21 years. We got married young, but my wife is she's an artist. We own an art gallery here in town and a little coffee shop attached to it. So art and coffee. Actually, her art is right behind me. That's one of her paintings. So looks like a picture, but
yes,
it's a painting. And she's awesome. We have 3 kids. Dennis, who's 19, just finished his first year of college. Lena, short for Evangelina, she just graduated high school. And then our youngest is Micah, and he is going to be a junior football player. He's all boy, and just a blast to have around. So that's us.
Now looking at that photo, I've seen other photos that your wife has done. She is absolutely spectacular. And being somebody who loves the beach, I'm just like drawn to the amazing skill that she has. If somebody is watching on YouTube, like if you're just listening to the audio, you need to go check out YouTube and actually see the painting for yourself. But if somebody's watching and they see that painting or they want to see others and purchase something, is there a website or a place they can go to check that out?
The best place to see everything updated, like all of our most recent stuff, is Hannah Fountain Art on Instagram. But okay. You can also check her out. We have a website, Hannah Fountain Art. I think it's hannahfountainart.com. And then, she does custom. She does, she specializes in water, like genuinely her water, it looks like it's real. But she also does some incredible, other scenes, and she does a lot of commission work, and she's extremely talented. So she does shows all over the U.S., mainly the West Coast, but like this year we have 7 shows, I think 6 or 7 shows from Moses Lake all the way down to San Diego, California. So
that's so cool. I got to get you down to Florida here. I record in my living room, which is decorated as the beach, which is very appropriate for where we live. But I need to commission something right above my couch over here.
Yeah. Well, we
got to figure that out.
There's some art shows. I don't know if you know it, but Florida has, it's mainly like October to March. They do like beachside art shows all over, I think it's like 10 or 15, 20 coastal towns.
Yeah.
So we actually looked into it a couple years ago, but she would have to be gone for like 6 or 8 weeks, and so I was like, nah, I don't know about that. So we hadn't pulled the trigger on that one yet.
Time to take a sabbatical and make the journey, I think.
I don't know how much
So,
rest I would get during that sabbatical though.
yeah, that's true. But like our little beach town here, they do an art show down there just like what you're talking about. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's so cool.
there's a ton down there to do. So yeah,
Yeah, tons of places where you could definitely she could sell her art. So it's cool to hear about your family and what you got going on. And it's one of the things I love about you as a leader as well is, you know, your family bond and connection, how strong that is. So that's kind of who you are as a family unit. Can you give us a little background insight on your ministry experience?
yeah. So my wife and I both grew up as pastors' kids. I would
And you still did it?
Yeah, man, we did, and honestly, both of us had a good experience growing up. Both of us have a lot of respect for our dads. We grew up in very balanced Christian homes, and
Awesome.
my dad passed away in 2021. He's my best friend outside of my wife. My dad was my superhero, and I have gained more knowledge from him than anybody else, and my father-in-law is right up there, right next to him. My father-in-law pastored till last year, and then retired, and now just doing the retirement thing, even though he's still working a ton. But yeah, we both grew up in ministry, and we got married in between our junior and senior year of college, and went into ministry, went on staff, actually working for my dad for 4.5 years in South Tacoma, a town
cool.
called Lakewood. And so I was a youth pastor there, kind of in the hood, in the ghetto, and that's where I grew up. So I was used to it, and had a great time, great ministry. Stay in touch with the handful of kids that were in our program then. But then in 2010, we felt God leading us to take the next step, and so we began raising some money and started Moses Lake Baptist Church in March of 2011. So as of this recording, this past March, we hit 14 years. And man, He's done a great work here. We've seen a lot of people trust Christ, and a lot of people get baptized, and we've started 2 churches out of our church, and then we've sent another staff member to revitalize a church. He's been there for a year now, and then we have 6 or 7, trying to think, 6 or 7 people on staff right now, counting me, and spouses and everything. So that's the church side of things. And then about 4 years ago, I started a leadership business, really just to connect with businesses, and I do a lot of leadership coaching, business coaching, consulting. Largest running contract right now is with the sheriff's office, doing a bunch of, I do a lot of their administrative training, and then I've worked with restaurants and real estate offices and Christian schools and all of that, not just here in Washington, but all over doing that. So kind of all of it goes hand in hand, because it's all for the purpose of reaching people for Jesus and glorifying the Lord. So.
Excellent. So year 15's coming for Moses Lake Baptist Church. You have any big celebration in the works?
Not a huge celebration. I mean, we'll do some special things for the 15th. We've got some commemorative things. It's still 10 months away, so we're in the planning phases of it. Got a great staff that does a lot of that, and then we're trying to build. We've been trying to raise money for 2 years. We bought property in 2021, paid it off, did our plans in 22, and then 23, 24. We've been trying to raise money, and still working on that. Working on some grant programs, and working with some different groups that help churches, and then a couple of banks that we're trying to pull some loans from. So praying that we can get that kicked off before the 15th. That would be incredible. Or praying for another church building here in town to open up. You don't want to pray for a church to fail, but there's been some churches here that have had some issues that their building would be great for us, and so we're praying that maybe God would put it on their heart to merge or something like that, just so we can get a building. We went to 2 services 3 years ago, just because of capacity, and so I don't mind 2 services, but going back to 1 would be kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah, there's pluses, minuses, both directions when you have one service or multiple.
Right. Yeah.
So I always think it's an amazing thing when somebody grows up in ministry life and then chooses to go that direction based upon, their experience with their parents and everything else. I never got the chance to meet your dad, but if your dad had an opportunity to share, just pass along one piece of information to the ministry leaders who are watching and listening with us, what do you think he would want to pass on to them?
Man. Dude, that's so hard. Like, honestly, my dad he was a soul winner. My dad loved reaching people with Jesus. I can't say that there'd be like one piece like this is the gem. He helped me out a ton in understanding balance and understanding what it means to be an individual pastor that leads his church well and doesn't get caught up in the philosophies and politics of ministry. Probably, early on, I asked my dad a similar question. I was like, Dad, like, I'm starting a church. What's something that you would tell me, just to help as a pastor? And he did say, he said, outside of loving God, loving people, like that's been a big thing in our life. And my dad just said, don't neglect relationships. Like, spend time with your people and get out of your office, go have a cup of coffee, take someone out to eat, and like realize that you are a pastor, not a boss. And sometimes a lot of pastors take on that boss mentality, and they forget the relational side of things. And so, I think that would be one. The other thing is a quote that we actually gave at his funeral that my dad said often. He would say something like this. He would say, "Everybody's hurting, so show them Jesus and try to encourage them." And that would be a great way to approach life and ministry, is just pointing people to Jesus and make someone smile. And
Most definitely.
my dad just, godly man, incredible guy. I got dozens of things from him. So
Excellent.
yeah.
So as I was thinking about this conversation we're going to have, kind of sent some questions along, but this question came up just as I was thinking about it. We're going to be talking about how to lead your staff well. And anytime you are dealing with any other human, you have the potential for hurt, for conflict, for heartache. Any nightmare scenarios you've had with staff person? Like, obviously, I don't want any names, but
Yeah, honestly, no.
So you're lucky.
Genuinely, yeah. We have been very blessed. We over the course of 14 years, we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Not counting me, we've had 10 staff members over the last 14 years.
Wow.
And they've all been great. I mean, there have definitely been challenges, but they've all been great. Actually, in preparation for today, I sent out to 4 of them, 2 of them that have or 3 of them that have since moved. 2 have moved. 1 is no longer on staff, but still at our church. And then 1 more who's still on staff. I emailed all of them the questions that you sent, and I said, like, hey, I need help. Like, what have we done good? What could I grow in? And they all sent back a handful of answers for different things. But yeah, we've been blessed. Yeah. God's blessed us with a great staff. Again, there have been challenges, and there have been upsetting things, and there have been times I'm like, I've got to fire this person. But thankfully, it never culminated with anything horrific. So.
Yeah, I've kind of shared some war stories with some other pastors of mine. The guy that I work with now, my executive pastor, he is excellent, top notch, best guy I've ever worked with. But I've had a couple of experiences where it's just like, I don't know if it's me. I don't know if I'm not that great at vetting people. Like, I don't know what the situation is, but I had one staff person who I'm big on equipping people and giving people opportunities. And so, I was giving this particular guy an opportunity to do some speaking, and without telling me he was going to do so, like in the middle of his sermon, he just up and resigns. And I'm like, what? Thanks for the heads up. Like when he was preaching, I'm like, wait, is he gonna? No. He is. I'm like, are
Did
you
he like finish
serious?
the sermon, or did he like just walk off?
No, he did finish it, but I was like,
That's
what
crazy.
in the world? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's
Yeah, I
not even
haven't
the
had
worst
that
thing.
happen.
Yeah. Like, what?
I've had
It's
like,
got to be me.
yeah, I no, it's not. I've had people. I mean, we've had challenging situations with leaders within our church, but not ever like staff positions. So I mean, we back when we first started, it's a very long story, so I'll simplify it. There was another church in town that had gone through some difficulty, so I began seeing people from that church come to our church, and I called the pastor and I was like, hey, like, what do you want me to do with this? And he was like, oh, brother, they're just not fitting in here. Feel free to let them be involved there, and they're good people, blah, blah, blah. So I just kind of, okay, whatever. And after, about 6 or 8 months, people started getting involved, and, we were literally, at the time, like, I think our church was 6 months old when all of this started. And over the course of the next year, we we gained a bunch of families. But then I found out that why they weren't fitting in was because they had these super extremely high standards. I mean, super high standards, that they were upset that I wasn't preaching against women wearing pants, or people going to the movies, or things like that. And I was just like, well, that's not who we are, and that's not who I'm going to be. And they were upset because we sang new songs, like anything a lot of people who maybe grew up in an ultra conservative world would have.
Yeah.
And so, it came to it. Like, I remember there was a couple of them that were leading, like one family was like leading our kids ministries, and the other family was leading in music stuff. And it came to the point that, one of them, I just said, hey, I think, like, during a service, the guy wouldn't shake my hand because I hadn't responded to 14 pages worth of letters that he had written me about my preaching, and how I'm not, like his Bible hero was, or whatever, like his preaching hero.
Yeah.
So anyway, I like pulled him aside during handshaking time, like at church, and I was like, look, if you're not going to be man enough to talk to me face to face, and if you're not going to shake my hand, like, you probably don't need to be here. And they left that day. And that was different, but it all culminated in that. And then another one was like the music guy that was doing our music at the time. His wife would not play anything new. She had been influenced, and I could name all of the people they'd been influenced by, but that doesn't matter. She'd been influenced by somebody that, preached or taught against anything new and anything syncopated and all that type of stuff musically. And I remember I worked with them for like 2 months on trying to figure things out. And they, eventually on a midweek service, they were meeting with me like right before the service, and they just walked out, and they were like, we're out, we're leaving. And so
oh, nice.
That was our guy leading music, so I'm like, great, I don't have a piano player or someone to lead music. And we're, at that time we were 3 years in. Thankfully we were 2 years in. Let's see. No, that was 2014. Yeah. So we were 3 years in. We were hiring a new staff member to do music. And he was coming the next week. So it actually, like, it was a God thing how it all worked out. But yeah. So I mean, I've
probably made that
challenges
transition
with
a little
people
smoother.
Yeah, it was weird. I mean, again, there's so much more to that story, but we don't have the time for that. And we're not here to talk about church troubles. So,
well, and that's when it's like, you want to call that pastor up and say, hey, you could have gave me a heads up on what the issues actually were.
Yeah. It was interesting, but oh well. God used it. God used it to establish, really he used it to help me early on as a pastor understand my leadership style, and how to work with people that you don't agree with. As a young pastor at the time, I was only like 27, 28 years old. And so all of that, God used it. It was good.
Yeah. So speaking of the early days, you founded Moses Lake in 2011. So how did you approach building your initial leadership team, and what are the lessons you learned in the early days that you kind of carried forward?
Man, there's like building our initial team. Like, so when we started, we did not do a launch team and all that type of stuff. Like, my wife and I traveled for 6 months to raise money. And we came to Moses Lake. There was a church that was here that had voted to close down and give us their building. So that was huge.
Oh,
so
cool.
we started
Wow.
literally, we started with a building, and there was 8 people that we knew for sure from that church that were going to start with us. So we knew we had our 5 and 8 more. So we knew we had 13, to start church with. But like of those 8, they're great people. Like 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of them are still with us. One has moved. And
That's incredible. That's incredible that they're still around.
Yeah, well, one of them's a deacon in our church. He's a great guy. But yeah, anyway, when we started, we didn't have this launch team approach that a lot of people have, which I wish I would have known about that back then. We kind of just did it the 1980s, 1990s way, like one guy, carve out some ground and go do something for Jesus and pray that you make it, so we had that approach, but thankfully God, again, I'm very, very grateful for my dad, because my dad really was a great pastor to work for, taught me a lot about leadership regarding your team and stuff like that. So when we were here, we were in about a year, and I knew we needed help. And there was a young man that had interned for us when I was on staff in Tacoma. And I knew that he would have been a great hire. So I just reached out to him. And we had interviewed others, I had gone to some colleges and done their interview days at different colleges and stuff like that. But my plug was I can't pay you anything. I just need you to move and get a job and help me start this church and see what happens. And it hit a point we actually could bring on this one couple. And so I offered them a job, and very low pay. Basically, it covered their housing. And gave them, I think I covered their housing, gave them a tank of gas a week, and $100 for groceries, or something. So young new married couple, they joined our staff in 2013, and they are actually our longest tenured staff. She stepped away from staff 4 years ago because of having her 4th baby, but he's still on staff. So his name's Robert. He's been incredible. So they've been with us for this is year 12 that they've been with us on staff.
Wow.
We'll recognize that in a few weeks. So yeah. So then from there, I don't know if you want me to just kind of keep talking through the initial things that we learned. We hired somebody the next year as well. Our music pastor, who now we started a church with him in 2020. He pastors in Wenatchee, Washington. His name is, Micah Boswell.
Yes, great guy. Yeah.
So when I hired Micah, I told him I can give you a tank of gas a week, pay for your phone, and then you just come out. So he actually moved out. They got married. He got a side job, working 40 hours a week and doing our music, and which his wife still gives me an extremely hard time about, because I didn't pay them very much for the first 2 years. But eventually we got him full time, and then that was kind of the early days. We didn't hire our next staff member until 2018, but yeah, there's a ton of lessons in those early days. I think probably one of the biggest lessons I tell church planters now is, what have you got to lose to ask? So if you know somebody that could come work with you, why not ask them? Hey, step out by faith and get a job and come help me start this church. Or step out by faith and we're revitalizing. I need help and I need you, because you have these qualities and I think you'd be great. I think a lot of guys are scared to ask, but there's a lot of Christians out there that just need to be asked, because they have a heart, they have a burden, they want to see people saved. So why not just step out and do it? That'd be a lesson I learned early on. I think setting your procedures and policies before you have staff is a wise move. Having your expectations in place before you hire is a good move. So yeah, those again, I could go on for hours about just different things we've learned or lessons from that, but those would be a few that I'd rattle off.
Well, and it's interesting because I think the culture for ministry life has kind of made a big shift. It used to be the only viable thing you ever thought about was being quote unquote full-time and being paid by the church, and that being your only job. And, that shift has has happened to where a lot of pastors I know choose to work full time at a secular job. I mean, my wife and I, we paint houses to earn a living, and we also lead Beachside Community Church. But I love that idea. Because of that shift, it's a lot easier to make that ask.
Right.
Where it's like, okay, I think that you'd be a great fit for us. In fact, my wife and I have some friends of ours who are living up in Iowa right now that they're making plans to move this way and to help us out here at Beachside. So I would encourage ministry leaders to, like Dennis says, make the ask. Like, you never know what God's doing in somebody's heart. So
yeah, and don't be afraid to go to like your church leadership and be like, hey, I need some help, and can we pay for someone's gas every week? A tank of gas, or pay for their phone, or pay, if you can, meet their housing bill, because then someone can just get a side job and do something that they like. Everyone on staff who needs to, well, no, none of them really need to. We have 3 full-time guys. All 3 of us have side gigs. And then I have 3 part-time employees right now, and all of them, or 2 of them, have side gigs. The other one is my mom. She's a retiree, but she serves 12 hours a week and still on staff. But everybody has side jobs because, I'm very adamant about getting out and meeting people, and don't just be inside of these 4 walls, and like recognize that life happens, and ministry has changed. We don't have a Christian school. I could probably make 40 hours worth of work for all of them, and we probably could make it work financially to pay all of them full time. But we don't have a need to right now. Like, God's growing us, God's working it. So I think just having a lot of that in place and then asking people is really what a lot of pastors probably don't realize we can do,
Yeah. And I just like the idea of creatively figuring out what's best for your church and your ministry where you are. And that may not be hiring everybody, quote unquote, full time.
Right.
So great suggestion there. So you've learned different lessons and everything. I know you're involved in leadership in a lot of different ways. But what would you say are the core values that guide your leadership philosophy when it comes to developing and managing your staff?
So this probably the biggest one, and it kind of bleeds into a couple of the other questions that we're going to talk through. But I encourage everybody, be a friend first. So
okay.
Our staff, we don't just serve together. We are all friends. We play games together. We hang out together. Our staff, like our younger staff, I'm 42. I know I'm not as seasoned as other people on this podcast right now.
Yes, you're the young man on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm just the young. What is it? Spring chicken, on this. But be a friend. So our young staff, they play video games together, and they have their video game nights. All of our staff, we play board games. We love. I actually have a cup over here. Have you ever played the Settlers of Catan?
Oh yeah.
I played Catan for 20 years, and I've introduced it to all of our staff and taught all of them. And we'll do Catan nights. Like, literally, there have been nights we've stayed up till 4 or 5 in the morning playing Catan.
I'm too old for that.
I know, I'm getting there. Again, I'm not as seasoned as some, but be a friend first is a huge thing. I think a lot of pastors, unfortunately, and I might have I posted something yesterday in the Pastors Connection group. I think James or somebody asked a question about being friends with people.
Yes,
I think a lot of pastors put a lot of blocks up, and it actually hurts. It's like, well, I just can't get close. Everybody's going to hurt, and everybody's going to be hurt, and it's part of being human.
Yeah.
But a lot of pastors pull themselves back from some of what could be the healthiest relationships. And our staff, core value is we are friends first. And I tell them that often, and I'm the pastor. I will and actually one of my guys, when I asked him a question about some of this, I forget which question it went to, but it was another question. We'll talk about conflicts. But he said one thing, Pastor, that you taught us well is to just always own it, even if it's not your fault, because we're friends.
Yeah.
And, that's something I've tried to do is like, if, somebody in our church comes up and says, hey, like so-and-so told me they would call me and they forgot. I don't say, oh man, they've done that a lot. I don't do that. I say, oh man, I'm so sorry that happened. Listen, that's probably my fault. I probably put something on them that made them, forget that. So if you will you forgive me? And I'll remind them, because it's a friend. I don't want to throw them under the bus. I don't want them to
That's
be
great.
like, wow, Pastor Dennis hates me. No, like, I can own it, because who cares? Like, that person's upset they didn't get a text message. Great. Like, they'll get over it,
Yeah.
But my friendship is deeper. So, regarding like a core value, I mean, friendship first is huge. And then, your walk with the Lord. Like, I'm very adamant to our staff. We are Christians before we are staff members. We are followers of Jesus before we are co-laborers. And so we talk often, and we do a weekly staff meeting. We do a yearly staff refresh. We do seasonal staff outings, and all the time we all ask each other, like, hey, how's your walk with the Lord? Where are you reading? What have you been studying? What's something you've learned lately? How has God been challenging you? How has your faith grown? How has your prayer grown? Just because if we're not walking with the Lord as like Christian leaders within the church, why would we ever expect our church to walk with the Lord? And that's, I think a lot of pastors miss that. Like, pastors are like, well, pastoring isn't a job, but then they don't even read the Bible. Like, a buddy of mine did a survey at a pastor's meeting one time, and it was like 75% said that they don't have a consistent walk with the Lord, like as a pastor. And I'm like, how? I don't know. How can you get up every week and preach, walk with Jesus, but as a pastor, not? How can you get up every week and preach, like, how can we say, like, love people and then be at strife and at odds with those closest working with us? Like, to me, a lot of that stuff, it just doesn't make sense. So put Jesus first, put your friendships first, and I think a lot of that leadership philosophy will kind of fall in place based upon loving God, loving people. So,
yeah, and I know, just being transparent, one of the things I really struggle with is getting into the Word and shutting off that part of my brain that is like trying to find something for somebody else. And where it's just like, hey, this is just for me and my own personal walk with God. And my mind always tends to want to run like, oh, this will make a great series here, or this would be, great for this person over here. And I just have a really hard time with that sometimes. I've got to constantly remind myself that, hey, it's not about a title of being pastor. Like, you're a follower of Jesus first.
Right. Well, and I think that's all just part of leadership, right? Like, we love people. So, I mean, I'm the same way. I'm hearing, listening to the word in the morning, I'm like, oh man, that would make such a great point. Oh, that would really help this person that I know is struggling. But I think at the end of the day, it's not about like how you do your time with God. Yeah. It's just about time with God. For years it was like, I grew up in a culture that was like, hey, did you have your Bible time today? Did you do your 30 minutes of reading and your 30 minutes of prayer? And, that wasn't my dad. My dad was all over the place. Like, I'd walk out, at 1 a.m. in the morning, my dad would be sitting in the living room with his Bible open, just reading. And I was,
that's cool.
That was super cool. And then there'd be times my dad would just, I walk in his office or whatever, and he'd just be studying or be praying, not for a message. He I just need it, And I think having like a genuine relationship with the Lord, where we are like, I'm giving you attention, so God, speak to me. It takes some discipline, but it's just, it's like our cell phones, right? If you're ever with your spouse and you pull your phone out and you're like looking at it, they're like, hey, come on, I'm right here, talk to me. Yeah. Sometimes we do that with the Lord, right? So we're not even with phones, but with our other thoughts. So we've got to, kind of put it all into captivity, like Paul talks about, and not let anything take over that time. So I think it's extremely important that we walk with Jesus before we try to lead people. Yeah,
and I love the relationship, the friendship also with your staff, and just being reminded of that first. And I'm just so blessed with the relationship I have with Rusty, who I work with now, where some staff meetings, it's like we literally don't get to church business because we're just chatting as friends, and we go to the movies and we just hang out. So That is solid advice to think about, and then a lot of the other stuff it'll figure itself out if you keep those two priorities.
Right.
So with having multiple staff members and different things going on, well, even if you only have like one staff member, or maybe you just have volunteers for those who are listening.
Yeah.
How do you balance delegation and oversight to empower your team while maintaining the church's vision and standards? Because one thing, if you're just holding on to it all yourself and doing it all yourself, you can kind of control that a little bit more, but that really limits what you can do.
Yeah. So there's a great leadership book out there by Simon Sinek, or Sinek, however you want to say his last name.
However you say it is right to me.
Yeah, it's called Start With Why, and it talks about businesses understanding their why. And so I think for a church, it's the same. What is our purpose, like as a staff, whether it's staff or volunteers? And I think probably most churches that would be like dialing into a podcast like this, probably most of them are working with volunteers or maybe some part-time staff, or like us, just 2 or 3 staff members. I think coming back to your purpose and the why and the substance of the church's identity behind coming to that ahead of the what. All right. Mm-hmm. So we just had a Christian concert this last weekend that we hosted, and it was part of our town. Our town does a huge thing called Spring Fest, which is a huge festival, and they have major artists come in. Most of them are like old time artists, but 2 years ago, Vanilla Ice was here in Moses Lake, and then,
oh, nice.
This year they had rappers.
He lives right close to us right here.
Yeah, super nice guy.
He's in town here all the time. Yeah.
I got to share the gospel with him for 25 minutes on that night, so
that's cool.
But we had Chingy and Bow Wow this year, which I don't know who these people are. They're rappers that are well known. They had 8,000 people at a concert one night. Well, I know the guy who runs everything, and we were having Travis Clark. I don't know if you know Travis Clark. He's just up and coming in the Christian music world, but
okay.
We had Travis in town for a friend day over the weekend, and so a couple months ago, I called my buddy who runs all this stuff, and I was like, hey, can we do a concert? Like, I'll pay for everything, but could we be the very first concert to kick things off? You guys have an hour open. And he was like, yeah, let's do a Christian concert. That'd be great. Cool. So I'm bringing that up to say, we did a lot of planning and all of that stuff, but our team and our volunteers, we kept coming back to the idea of, why are we doing this? We're doing this because we can present the gospel. And so we need to remember, the question, how do you balance delegation and oversight to empower the team? It's maintaining the church's vision is key, because that impacts everything we do. Now, if I know I'm giving the gospel tonight, then that's going to impact how I interact with people, and that's going to impact the people who have invitations to our church's friend day that are handing them out. That's going to impact your greeters at an event, whatever it is, if we keep coming back to that why. So does that make sense?
Totally. And I think it also helps, combat against the silo effect, where it's like, okay, I've got this staff member and they're completely focused on youth ministry, and so that's kind of their baby, and that's what they're working towards. And somebody else maybe over families, somebody else over outreach and whatever else. And that way there's not that, fighting for resources and whatever else. It's like, no, this is the main thing.
Yeah.
And how can we fit into that?
Yeah, and everybody has, like you just said, everybody has their pet ministry, right? People with little kids always want to talk to me about the nursery or kids class. People who have a music background always want to talk about music. People who were raised in church in the 60s and 70s always want to talk to me about hymns and modesty. And, it's just like everybody has their little thing. But I told one fella just recently, I was like, but we want to be encouraged. Check your preferences at the door, because we're all about Jesus, and everything is always going to be about Jesus. And so how do we keep lifting him up? And I think how we approach the why will always affect what we do and how we accomplish that. So,
yeah, and so those of you ministry leaders who maybe are struggling with a little of that inner conflict between staff members or maybe just volunteers or church leaders, just keeping them focused on the why, that we're all headed that same direction with that same goal in mind. Now, obviously, when we talk about interpersonal relationships, there can be conflict and struggle, and on your staff, you've not necessarily had the nightmare scenario, but can you kind of share maybe some leadership challenges you've had with your staff, and how you navigated through that to give people an idea of how they might work through theirs?
Yeah, I mean, with every staff, there's personality differences, and that always is at play. There's pride on my part and on their part.
Sure.
I think for us, some of our biggest challenges, and I actually, I had two of my staff guys that we've sent out that are pastoring now that responded to this question to like help me think through some things. But one of them said something that I hadn't thought of. We dealt with a lot of young staff. All the staff, excluding my mom, all the staff we've hired have been right out of Bible college. And that's just a different animal to attack, and I think naively when I was hiring at first, I kind of had this mindset like they're going to be just as prepared for ministry as I was. But this is not I think you'll understand this, and I think we've even had this conversation before. I grew up in ministry.
Right.
So like ministry is literally second nature to me. Like it's all I know. I love it. I love preaching. I love pastoring. I love leadership. I love soul winning, like talking to people about Jesus and trying to be a testimony in my area. Like I love ministry. So when I graduated college, like to me, it was not anything new. Like it wasn't a culture shock, nothing.
Well, you've already had 26 years experience going into it. So
I
totally.
had all those years. So I'm in my brain, I was thinking these staff members are going to have like this heart, and then I remember we hired one couple, and one of the girls in staff meeting, one of her first staff meetings, like literally we were talking like, all right, hey, this big day is coming up. We need to make sure. And we started talking through food and nursery workers and people, and all of our staff was chiming in. And this girl is like a deer in headlights, and she's fresh out of Bible college, and she went, I never realized every church does this when they plan big events, don't they? And I'm like, yeah.
No, it just happens.
Well, she's like, I just kind of showed up, and she's like, I guess I never thought about the back work and the work behind the scenes. And so, for me, I think I was pretty, I was a young pastor working with young staff members. And so that definitely was challenging.
Sure.
Working through pride is always challenging. I would probably, looking at the question, how do you navigate challenges? Like, I think I would encourage people, check your own heart first. I have to ask myself often, is this my pride or is this true leadership that would glorify the Lord? Because unfortunately, I think probably more often than not, we allow our pride to lead, thinking that we're doing something good for God, when in reality, it's just my own pride that is that's on the driver's seat. So I think that would be a big one.
Can I ask you a question real quick? Because we had a conversation happening in the Pastors Connection Facebook group, and somebody was asking for advice about dealing with a staff member who was kind of prideful, wouldn't take direction, thought their way was the best way, and all those sorts of things. How would you recommend somebody begin that conversation to try to help that individual get on the same page as everybody else?
I would probably ask them a lot. I mean, I would ask this pastor a lot of questions about their relationship with the person. Like, do you have a friendship? Have you ever tried to mentor? Do you ever go to coffee? Is there ever a time when you're trying to connect with them on a personal level? That's a challenging one. I think every situation is different. I'm probably a little more gracious sometimes than I need to be or should be. Because my whole thing often is like, they'll get it. Like it'll happen in time. But I have had to have conversations with some that I'm like, hey, like, this is not going well because you are not humbling yourself before God or with me or with other people in the church. And if this does not change, we are going to be making some changes. And I don't want to. I love you and I want you to be around. But if you do not address this and I don't see some change in the next 5 to 6 months, you will not be working here anymore. And I have had to have that conversation with a staff member, and thankfully they caught it and they were like, "You're right. Like I have been so filled with pride, and I need to step that back. Would you help me?" And I'm like, "Well, I need help with it too because I know that I can butt heads with you because of my pride." So I think for a leader, like owning your own pride, and then desiring to invest health and humility into the relationship, I think that's a big deal that a lot of pastors forget. Sometimes pastors get this mentality, like, I'm the pastor. Like, don't you know who I am? And, it's like, if you have to tell people who you are, you probably aren't fulfilling that role. Like, if you have to tell people you're in charge, you're not in charge. Like, I don't care who you are. People know who the leader is. People know who the leader is in the room. And it's not because they're domineering. It's because they love people and people want to follow them. And there have been times in my life where I have fit that well. There's been times where I haven't fit that well. But when the times that I'm not fitting that well, it's because of my own pride and because of my own, my own agenda. So, I think that there's a great way to address every one of these situations, but it comes back to like humbling yourself with that person. Going back to that question you just asked about that specific situation.
And I like that you approach it with grace, but you're also direct. And it's like, okay, this behavior, whatever it is not acceptable. I'm going to give you some time. So it's not just like, boom, you're done. I'm going to give you some time to work it out. And then they know what to expect. And it's like, if things don't change, pastor, ministry leader, you've got to do what's best for your ministry and for the people that you're shepherding, and you've got to pull the trigger sometimes and fire people. And it's not fun, but it's best for your church. It's also best for that individual as well, if they're just not on the same page as you.
Yeah. And I, looking at like either firing people or letting people go or just people leaving the church, and you and I have had this conversation before. It's kind of funny. Remember just a minute ago before we recorded, we were talking about like just fighting through the week, looking forward to Sunday's nap. So for those of you that are just listening or watching, like Thomas and I were talking about the stresses of pastoring and how sometimes you're like, oh, I can't wait to get to Sunday afternoon because I get a nap. Now,
love my nap.
Like listening, for those that maybe are listening or watching that do not do naps, like just try it. Like literally try a Sunday afternoon nap. It'll change your world.
Yeah.
But anyway, during a week, if it's all stressful, like I'm that person, I'm like, all right, looking forward to Sunday afternoon's nap. I want to compare that, like when someone leaves the church or you have to let someone go or fire somebody, don't get so caught up in what's happening right now. Let's look a year down the road. Like our church is going to be healthier because this person is no longer around. And we've had that happen with people in leadership positions where, man, I remember I got an email 6 a.m. on Sunday morning of a family leaving our church that was heavily involved, leading classes, involved, like leading in ministry. And I get
it's always at the worst time
we're
too.
Not coming back. And I remember I was struggling, and my wife said to me, she's like, right before I left for church, she said, "Hey, God can work through this." And I remember I thought there's going to be residual fallout because of this. And one family that I thought would leave, they asked me that day, like, "Hey, where's so-and-so today? I thought they were going to be here." And I said, "Yeah." Unfortunately, they emailed me this morning, and I'm open with people. Like, I'm not like, "Oh, I don't know." Like, I'm like, "Oh, they emailed me this morning that they are leaving our church." Well, why? I don't know. They didn't give me a reason. They're like, "Seriously?" And I went, "Yeah." And this guy went, "Oh, that's a bummer. I'm going to miss him. Well, see you next week, Pastor."
Nice.
And when that happened, like, honestly, I felt like the Lord was like, "Hey, like, look beyond this." So, when someone leaves our church or when we have to have a hard conversation with a staff member or someone in a leadership position and they end up leaving, look beyond it. Like there's health there. It's the Lord's church. He will take care of it. He will provide health if I'm leading humbly. Now, if I fired them because of my own pride, that's probably a situation you got yourself into that probably isn't going to work out very well because pride is in the driver's seat. So anyway.
So you just mentioned transparency with your church people. What role does communication play in your leadership, and how do you ensure transparency and clarity with your team?
Well, go back to that friendship thing, right? If we're friends, you can say anything you want to a friend.
Yeah.
So within our team, we invite honesty. My office door is always open. I will respond to my staff all the time. And regarding like communication in events and just the leadership level, like we communicate all the time. We have a staff text that everybody puts stuff in. We've got like our lead staff, and then our staff and families text, and then I have a deacons text. We're communicating about stuff all the time. Staff, we have a staff meeting every week. Every Tuesday that I'm in town. If I'm not in town, then one of our other staff guys runs a staff meeting. And staff meeting may be 30 minutes, it may be 2 hours. It depends on the follow-up. It depends on what's coming up on the calendar.
Okay.
But then like regarding transparency and clarity, like honesty is huge. Honesty, actually in our home, like in our family, dishonesty is the worst thing that you can do within our home. To lie or be deceitful. Like that provides the worst consequences in our home with my family. So like the kids, they're teenagers. If there's any dishonesty with anything, it's like, all right, like I'm taking away friends, phones, all that stuff now for a month. What? Yeah. Well, dishonesty is huge. So our kids know that. We try to implement that in the staff, like dishonesty and gossip, slander, like that type of stuff. You don't want that. You don't want that. That sows something that what you reap is going to be unhealthy. So really talking about honesty, talking about being open regarding like if there's a disagreement, if some like when we sit in a staff meeting and we're planning something, if somebody's like, I don't like that, they're allowed to say it. And cool. I have to, this is where I struggle. I have to battle back my own pride and the way I lead, because I am a very driven person. Because of being a leadership owner and all of that stuff, I'm like, no, I know this is the way it's going to work, But they're going to bring a different paradigm that helps me see it from a different angle, and I need to be open to that. And so, again, check your pride at the door. Being humble, being open, allowing for feedback, allowing for honest opinions, and being able to say, yeah, let's do it your way. Like, that's a great thing to do, And again, like I didn't do that early on with our staff. I was kind of like, nope, this is what I'm saying, so we're going to do it this way. I learned as we got into it, like be open and just allow other people to have an opinion, and sometimes go with their opinion because it probably is better than mine.
So as the lead pastor, we have the responsibility to, invest in help our congregations learn and grow. But we have that responsibility for our staff members as well, helping them in their growth. So what do you do to foster a culture of continuous growth and development among your pastoral and administrative staff?
Yeah. I constantly ask them how they're doing, like literally all the time. 2 to 3 times in a week, like, hey, how you doing? How's your marriage? How's your finances? Are you guys hurting right now? I encourage them in staff meetings, not every week, but often I'll have a quick challenge, not just like a devotion, but like, hey, here's something I learned, regarding my leadership business or a book I'm reading. We do staff development at our staff refresh. Usually it's a Monday night, all day Tuesday, Wednesday morning event. We all go to an Airbnb in a different town. So usually Monday night it's staff training, and Tuesday morning staff training, church calendar for first 6 months. Then in the afternoon and evening we do a bunch of fun things. We go out to eat, church pays for everything, we budget for it. I give everybody money, to go shopping. And then Tuesday night, another challenge, prayer together. Wednesday morning, something about administration or something not just spiritual, but has spiritual principles, but is built more around leading people within the church or volunteers or something like that. And then we plan the last 6 months of the year. Everybody on staff at some point will be over a major event so that they learn how to delegate themselves. So that's part of the development. And then with my 5 guys that I have, 4 of them are assistant pastors, and then 1 is just doing music, but he's not a pastor. I really put into them a lot. Well, I'm the 5th, so 4 of them. Yeah, 4 of them. Sorry, I had to think through who it was.
Yeah.
I give them books often, and like, hey, I want you to read this. We'll go through a book together.
Cool.
Not necessarily reading together, but we'll just talk through it. I do a lot of leadership books. I mean, because of the leadership business, I do a lot of stuff with teams working together, like John Maxwell's DISC. I do that with our staff. This next year, I'm doing Patrick Lancioni's 6 Types of Working Genius for all of our staff. We're doing that at our staff refresh this fall. So, again, that's all part of like the leadership side of things. But I think, just trying to invest in them.
How often did you say you do that refresh?
We do that once a year.
Once a year, okay.
Yeah, and then the weekly staff meetings, and then quarterly we try to do something else together.
Okay.
So like last year we all went to a Chris Tomlin or a Phil Wickham concert, and took everybody. And
cool.
Then like this year, I can't remember what's coming up, but I think we have just like a staff. I actually don't even know if it's on the calendar, but a staff night out or something like that we'll do in the month of July when we kind of have some downtime and everybody's done with camps and giving babies and all that stuff, having babies and all that stuff. So
yeah. Now, does your church pay for them to go on like to conferences or further things like that?
Yeah, we try to. It's hard, in Washington. Like, there's nothing near us that's like necessarily great. But we try to send our core staff team, so our pastoral staff, try to send them to something every year or every other year, even if it's just a fellowship conference. I loved when the Idea Network was going because we did that every year. Took our staff every year to Idea Day. And we were
going to Vegas is always fun.
Yeah, and just getting a couple days away. But I mean, we, again, like if they asked, hey, could we go to this? The answer is yes, we'll figure it out. But a lot of that, unfortunately, a lot of that calendar wise doesn't fit in. So we try to get the training in some other way. So,
yeah. And going to give you an opportunity in a few minutes here to share your contact info. But that staff training, is that something like if a pastor doesn't know how to do that or doesn't have time to figure it out, that he can call you and say, hey, could you come on our refresh, whatever you want to call it, and lead us through some of this stuff?
Totally. Yeah, actually, so I don't know, you gave a little plug for your family meeting, so I'll throw a plug in for my leadership.
Go for it. Go for it.
So I actually have I haven't launched it yet in the Pastors Connection Network or Idea Network Facebook page, but I have some openings coming up for this fall and next year that if a pastoral team or a workers team wanted me to come in and do some coaching or via Zoom, staff training, anything like that, that's literally what I do on the side with outside businesses. But because of where we're at, I can open that up to some churches and stuff like that. Right now, I can't take on a bunch, but if there's 3 or 4 that wanted to do something, I'd be more than willing to do that. If it's ever to come in and speak, I love doing that. Love traveling and speaking, and not. I think you'll understand this, not because I feel like I'm the greatest and everybody needs to listen to me, but I do love it, and I have a passion for helping people be encouraged in the Lord and to realize their potential for the Lord and purpose from God. And if I can help them do that with a staff team and help your church move forward, I would very much be willing to do that. So,
yeah. Well, as one of the founders of the network, I want to encourage you to share that in the group, because I believe that you will be a great help to churches, to ministry leaders. Before we go, though, I want to ask you one more question, because we alluded to this earlier on. And so some people heard the word conflict and they've been waiting for this question the entire episode. So There's bound to be conflict, disagreement, maybe not between you and staff members, but between other staff members and even church people. So how do you, in your ministry at Moses Lake, handle those conflicts and disagreements among staff members?
I think going back to that statement about humility, I get them together, and we have had conflict between staff members. Honestly, we sit down in a room and I mediate, and all right, what's your issue? Just like you would with a couple that you're counseling. Like, all right, what are you going through? What are you going through? Okay, here's what the Bible says. Here's what we're looking at scripturally. Thankfully, we've never had like really deep conflict. It's just been personality quirks, and well, that guy, he's just an idiot, or she's always bossy, or whatever. Like, okay, well, let's work through this. Chain of command, and I say that loosely because a lot of people hear chain of command and they're like, oh, you guys are top heavy. Like, no, but we all know, like, okay, like we're coming into youth camp season. Well, Robert is the youth pastor. Okay, Robert has final say on everything that happens. Now, I know as the pastor, I know I have final say. I know that. Yeah. I'm the pastor. I'm the lead pastor. I know that he's going to always say, Pastor, what do you think? What do you want? But he knows 12 years ago, I said, you're the youth pastor. Lead it. It's your ministry. I will be here. I will give advice. But at the end of the day, you're with the teenagers at camp. I might be there hosting the speaker, but you're the youth pastor. So I think when you look at resolving conflict, I think sometimes chain of command needs to be very clear. If we're dealing with a youth thing, Robert's in charge. If we're dealing with a church administrative thing, Michael's in charge. If we're doing regarding music, it's going to be me and Noah. If we're doing anything with kids, Carlos has it. Like, everybody has their area. Judy has all cleaning and all of our hospitality meals. Beth has all nursery. So if you have that order of who's in charge and that depth chart, if you will, like that flow chart, then it really helps clarify conflict. When it's just personalities, I ask people, and I go straight biblical, like, okay, what's the Bible say about this opinion? Like, what does the Bible say about this conflict? And if they're like, well, okay, maybe we just need to humble ourselves. Maybe we just need to come back to Scripture and realize we're friends first, working in ministry, and personalities are going to be there. But how you grow a relationship is by working through those differences and coming to an agreement and understanding that we're in this together for the same purpose. Your opinion, my opinion. In a year, we're going to forget what we were arguing about. In a week, we're going to not know what today was about. So that's more important, So I think being direct with conflict is huge. And again, I know I've been repetitive on it, but to a lot of pastors, man, just be humble. Like, you don't have all the answers. Just because you're the pastor doesn't mean you know everything. Like, I need help, and I need our staff, and they sharpen me. They have grown me. I have, honestly, I can genuinely say this. My best friends are people who I serve with, and I don't apologize for that. And they sharpen me, and they hold me accountable. There have been times I've had a staff member call me out and say, Pastor, that's out of line, or your attitude, or you got angry today, and I could tell. And I need them to say that. And, I'm not a yeller or anything like that, but I'm very sarcastic. And Robert, who's on our staff, like, he catches my sarcasm. And actually, even yesterday in a staff meeting, I got sarcastic with somebody, and I was just kind of kidding. But Rob just looked at me, and he mouthed the words, "Stop it." And I started laughing, and he started laughing, and he was right. Like, I was becoming sarcastic to the point of this guy going like, man, is Pastor angry at me? And I wasn't, but Rob called me out on that. I need that.
That's great.
But 7 years ago, I would have been like, what is it your play? But man, humility helps that out a ton.
So if people want to ask some questions, they want to continue the conversation or reach out to you about staff development and training and all that stuff, what is the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah, best way would be through my email. So if you wanted to email me at dennisjfountain@gmail.com, that's dennisjfountain@gmail.com. They could email me questions, just put staff questions or something like that. If I don't respond, give it a couple days. If I don't respond after about 3 or 4 days, Facebook message me or Instagram. Dennis and Hannah Fountain or Dennis Fountain Leadership are the pages that I have. I'll be honest though, I don't check a lot of Dennis Fountain leadership stuff just because of busyness. I probably should. I'm a horrible online advertiser. All my stuff's word of mouth. But trying to improve that, actually hiring my daughter to take care of a lot of my advertising.
Oh, excellent.
With school, so we're going to be down that road. But yeah, dennisjfountain@gmail.com. Regarding the leadership stuff, if people wonder, I'm certified with John Maxwell and Patrick Lencioni's 6 Types of Working Genius, and so I can teach curriculums. There's a website, dennisfountainleadership.com. You can go on and find referrals from businesses, from law enforcement, all the way to real estate officers, to city council, to stuff like that. So,
excellent. And you can reach us here at the Pastors Connection Network by going to pastorsconnectionnetwork.com or finding us on Facebook at Pastors Connection Network. Dennis, thank you so much for your time today and for investing in all of us as leaders.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I love what you guys are doing, and just keep doing it. Pastors need it. They need the encouragement.
Thank you for joining us on the Pastors Connection podcast. May you be inspired and equipped to lead with grace and purpose until we meet again.